The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine gardens of Windsor Castle as Sergeant Michael Thompson adjusted his ceremonial uniform one final time. At 35 years old, he had dedicated 15 years of his life to protecting the royal family, and today felt no different from any other day of service. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sound of tourists gathering at the castle gates. Michael had always taken pride in his role as a royal protection officer. His colleagues often joked that he took the job too seriously, but Michael knew that every member of the royal family, regardless of age, deserved the same level of dedication and protection. This philosophy had earned him respect among his peers and recognition from senior palace officials. As he walked through the East Terrace garden, Michael noticed young Prince Louis playing near the ornate fountain with his wooden toy soldiers. The 8-year-old prince had always been spirited and curious, often wandering off during official functions to explore hidden corners of the various royal residences. Today, Louis wore a simple navy blue sweater and khaki trousers, looking every bit the normal child he rarely got to be in public. The prince was arranging his toy soldiers in formation, recreating what appeared to be a medieval battle scene. His concentration was absolute as he moved each figure with careful precision, completely absorbed in his imaginative world. Michael smiled slightly, remembering his own childhood fascination with military history and toy soldiers. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," Michael said softly, not wanting to startle the boy but ensuring his presence was known. Louis looked up with bright eyes and a genuine smile. "Oh, hello, Sergeant Thompson. Look what I'm doing. I'm making the Battle of Hastings, but the good guys win this time." Michael chuckled. "That's quite impressive, sir. You've got excellent tactical positioning there." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps on the gravel path. Michael's trained instincts immediately kicked in as he assessed the approaching figure. Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's son from her first marriage, was walking toward them with purposeful strides. His expression was stern, and there was something about his demeanor that immediately put Michael on alert. Tom had always been a complicated figure within the extended royal circle. While not officially part of the line of succession, his mother's marriage to King Charles had given him a unique position that he sometimes seemed to leverage inappropriately. At 49 years old, Tom was known for his successful career as a food writer and critic, but palace staff had occasionally reported incidents where he appeared to overstep boundaries with younger royals. "Prince Louis," Tom called out in a tone that was sharper than necessary for addressing a child. "Your mother has been looking for you everywhere. You shouldn't be out here unattended." Michael immediately stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between Tom and the young prince. "Mr. Parker Bowles, His Royal Highness is under my supervision and protection. The Princess of Wales is aware of his location." Tom's eyes narrowed as he looked at Michael with obvious irritation. "I don't recall asking for your input, Sergeant. This is a family matter." The tension in the air was palpable. Michael had encountered similar situations before where family dynamics within the royal household created delicate situations. However, his primary responsibility was always the safety and well-being of the royals under his protection, regardless of internal family politics. Prince Louis, sensing the adult tension, began gathering his toy soldiers closer to himself. His earlier joy and enthusiasm had been replaced by uncertainty and discomfort. Michael noticed the child's reaction and felt his protective instincts strengthen. "With respect, Mr. Parker Bowles," Michael said in his most diplomatic but firm tone, "my orders come directly from the Prince and Princess of Wales regarding their children's security. Prince Louis is exactly where he should be." Tom took a step closer, his voice rising slightly. "Don't quote protocol to me. I've been part of this family longer than you've been employed here. Louis, come with me now." The young prince looked between the two adults, clearly confused and beginning to show signs of distress. His lower lip trembled slightly, and he clutched his favorite toy soldier tighter. Michael recognized the signs of a child being placed in an uncomfortable position between adults, and his resolve strengthened. "Your Royal Highness," Michael said gently to Louis, "why don't you continue with your battle scene right there by the fountain? I'll be right here with you." This direct contradiction of Tom's command clearly infuriated Camilla's son. His face reddened, and he stepped even closer to Michael, attempting to use his height advantage to intimidate the guard. "You're overstepping your authority, Sergeant," Tom said through gritted teeth. "I suggest you remember your place." Michael had faced down armed intruders, dealt with aggressive paparazzi, and handled numerous security threats throughout his career. He was not about to be intimidated by a family member who was attempting to assert authority he didn't possess, especially when it involved the well-being of a child. "My place, Mr. Parker Bowles, is protecting members of the royal family." "That's exactly what I'm doing." The standoff continued as Tom seemed to be calculating his next move. Behind them, Prince Louis had quietly moved closer to the fountain, clearly hoping to distance himself from the confrontation. His small form seemed even smaller against the backdrop of the Grand Castle gardens. Other palace staff had begun to notice the commotion. A gardener working nearby had stopped his pruning and was watching the scene unfold with obvious concern. Two housekeeping staff members had paused in their duties near the castle's side entrance, whispering quietly to each other as they observed the tense exchange. Michael's radio crackled softly with routine security updates, but he kept his attention focused on Tom and Prince Louis. His years of training had taught him to maintain awareness of his entire environment while dealing with immediate threats or challenges. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here," Tom said, his tone shifting to what he probably thought was more diplomatic. "I'm simply trying to help ensure Louis gets back to his parents safely." "I appreciate your concern," Michael replied, though his stance remained alert and protective. "However, His Royal Highness is safe and accounted for under current security protocols." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another figure. Lady Susan Hussey, one of the Queen's former ladies-in-waiting and a respected figure within the palace hierarchy, approached with the measured pace of someone accustomed to diffusing delicate situations. "Gentlemen," she said in her crisp, authoritative voice, "is everything quite all right here?" Tom immediately adopted a more conciliatory tone in the presence of Lady Susan. "Of course, Lady Hussey. I was simply concerned about young Louis being out here alone." Lady Susan glanced at Michael with a knowing look. She had witnessed similar situations over her decades of palace service and understood the dynamics at play. "Sergeant Thompson," she said, "I believe the Princess of Wales mentioned she would be collecting Prince Louis from the gardens at 11 o'clock? Michael checked his watch and nodded. "Yes, ma'am. She should be here within the next 15 minutes. "Excellent," Lady Susan said with a smile that managed to be both warm and diplomatically final. "Tom, perhaps you'd join me for tea? I have some delightful stories about your mother's recent charitable work that I think you'd find interesting." The suggestion was clearly more of a polite command than an invitation. Tom seemed to recognize this and, after a moment's hesitation, nodded his agreement. "Of course, Lady Susan. That sounds lovely." As the two adults walked away toward the castle, Michael felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. However, he remained alert and focused on Prince Louis, who had returned to his toy soldiers but was now playing with noticeably less enthusiasm than before. "Are you all right, Your Royal Highness?" Michael asked gently. Louis looked up with eyes that seemed older than his 8 years. "Why was Mr. Tom so angry? Did I do something wrong?" Michael knelt down to the boy's level, speaking in the calm, reassuring tone he had perfected over years of working with the royal children. "You didn't do anything wrong at all, sir. Sometimes adults have disagreements, but that's not your fault or your concern. Your job is just to be a kid and play with your soldiers." The prince seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding solemnly. "Will you stay here with me until Mummy comes?" "Absolutely, Your Royal Highness. That's exactly what I'm going to do." As they settled back into the peaceful routine of play, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation with Tom Parker Bowles was just the beginning of something larger. His instincts, honed by years of security work, told him that this incident would have repercussions beyond what had just occurred in the garden. The morning sun continued to shine down on Windsor Castle's gardens, but, for Michael Thompson, the day had already proven that even in the most beautiful and seemingly safe environments, a royal protection officer must always be prepared to stand firm in defense of those under their care. Prince Louis had resumed his battle scene, but Michael noticed the boy glancing up at him frequently, as if seeking reassurance that his protector was still there. Each time their eyes met, Michael offered an encouraging nod, silently promising that he would always stand between the young prince and anyone who might wish him harm or distress. The incident had lasted less than 20 minutes, but Michael knew it would be discussed in security briefings and palace corridors for much longer. His decision to stand firm against Tom Parker Bowles had been instinctive and professional, but he was aware that it might create complications in the complex web of royal family relationships. As the clock tower chimed the half-hour, Michael spotted Princess Catherine approaching through the rose garden, her elegant figure unmistakable even at a distance. Relief washed over him as he prepared to hand over care of Prince Louis to his mother, knowing that his primary duty had been fulfilled successfully despite the unexpected confrontation. The morning's events had reminded him why he had chosen this career path and why he remained committed to protecting the royal family, regardless of the personal or professional challenges that commitment might bring. Princess Catherine approached the fountain area with her characteristic grace, immediately sensing the subtle tension that lingered in the air despite the peaceful garden setting. Her maternal instincts were finely tuned after years of raising 3 children under intense public scrutiny, and she could tell something had unsettled her youngest son. "Hello, darling," she said warmly to Prince Louis, who immediately brightened at his mother's arrival. "I hope you've been having a wonderful time with your soldiers." "Mummy!" Louis exclaimed, running to embrace her legs. "Sergeant Thompson stayed with me the whole time, and I made the Battle of Hastings, but I made the good guys win." Catherine smiled and ruffled her son's hair before looking up at Michael with questioning eyes. The experienced royal protection officer caught her subtle inquiry immediately. "Your Royal Highness," Michael said with a slight bow, "Prince Louis has been perfectly behaved. We did have a brief visit from Mr. Parker Bowles, but everything was handled appropriately." Catherine's expression remained neutral, but Michael noticed the slight tightening around her eyes that indicated she understood there was more to the story. Her years as a member of the royal family had taught her to read between the lines of diplomatic language. "I see," she said simply. "Louis, why don't you gather your soldiers? We should head inside for lunch." As Prince Louis busied himself collecting his toys, Catherine moved slightly closer to Michael, speaking in the low, discreet tone that royal family members had perfected for sensitive conversations in potentially observed spaces. "Was there any cause for concern, Sergeant Thompson?" Michael appreciated her direct but careful approach. "Mr. Parker Bowles seemed to believe Prince Louis needed to be elsewhere, Your Royal Highness. I maintained that he was safe and appropriately supervised in accordance with your instructions." Catherine nodded, her expression revealing nothing to any potential observers but conveying to Michael that she understood and approved of his actions. "Thank you for your continued dedication, Sergeant. Your judgment in these matters is always appreciated." The brief exchange said everything that needed to be said. Catherine trusted Michael's professional assessment, and he had successfully protected her son not just from physical harm but from being placed in an uncomfortable position by an adult who had overstepped appropriate boundaries. Later that afternoon, Michael was called to report to Commander James Harrison, the head of Royal Protection Services. The commander's office in the palace was spartanly decorated but efficiently organized, reflecting the serious nature of the work conducted there. "Sergeant Thompson," Commander Harrison began without preamble, "I understand there was an incident this morning involving Mr. Parker Bowles and Prince Louis." Michael had expected this summons. "Yes, sir. Mr. Parker Bowles attempted to remove Prince Louis from the East Terrace garden against established protocols and the child's obvious comfort level." Commander Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying Michael carefully. "Tell me exactly what happened, from the beginning." Michael recounted the morning's events in precise detail, as he had been trained to do. He described Tom's approach, his demanding tone with Prince Louis, his dismissive attitude toward established security protocols, and his attempt to intimidate Michael when his authority was questioned. "And your assessment of the situation?" Commander Harrison asked. "Sir, Mr. Parker Bowles was not acting in an official capacity and had no authority to override established security arrangements. Prince Louis was clearly uncomfortable with the aggressive approach, and my primary responsibility was to ensure his safety and well-being." Commander Harrison nodded slowly. You're aware, I assume, that Mr. Parker Bowles has filed a complaint about your conduct? Michael felt his stomach tighten but kept his expression neutral. No, sir, I was not aware of that. He claims you were insubordinate and refused to follow the reasonable instructions of a senior family member. He's suggesting that your judgment may be impaired by an overzealous interpretation of your duties. The word stung, but Michael had faced criticism before. His record spoke for itself, and he knew that his actions had been professionally sound and personally necessary. Sir, with respect, Mr. Parker Bowles is not a senior family member in terms of the line of succession or official royal duties. His relationship to the family through marriage does not supersede established security protocols or the specific instructions I receive from the direct parents of the children under my protection. Commander Harrison's expression remained unreadable, but Michael caught a slight nod that suggested approval. The complaint has also been reviewed by Princess Catherine and Prince William. They both provided statements strongly supporting your actions and judgment. Relief flooded through Michael, though he was careful not to show it. Thank you, sir. However, Commander Harrison continued, this incident highlights some of the complex family dynamics that we must navigate in our roles. Mr. Parker Bowles may not have official authority, but his complaints can still create diplomatic challenges within the household. Michael understood the implication. While his actions had been correct and supported by the people who mattered most, the political ramifications within the extended royal family could still create problems. What are your recommendations going forward, sir? Commander Harrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the castle grounds. Continue doing exactly what you've been doing, Sergeant. Your primary responsibility is the safety and well-being of the royals under your direct protection. However, be aware that this incident may not be the end of your interactions with Mr. Parker Bowles. That evening, Michael returned to his small apartment in the staff quarters, mentally reviewing the day's events. His phone buzzed with a text message from his colleague, Sergeant Patricia Williams, who handled security for other members of the royal family. Heard about this morning. Well done standing your ground. Palace gossip says Tom's been causing issues for months. Michael appreciated the support but knew that palace gossip, while often accurate, could also be dangerously unreliable. He made himself a simple dinner and settled in with a book, trying to clear his mind of the day's complications. The next morning brought new challenges. As Michael arrived for his shift, he noticed several staff members giving him looks that ranged from supportive to curious to concerned. Word of his confrontation with Tom Parker Bowles had clearly spread through the palace's informal communication network. Prince Louis seemed completely unaffected by the previous day's events, greeting Michael with his usual enthusiasm and immediately wanting to show off a new book about knights and castles that his grandmother had given him. Sergeant Thompson, look. This book has all the battles you know about, and it has pictures of armor just like the guards wear. Michael smiled, genuinely pleased to see that the boy had suffered no lasting effects from Tom's inappropriate behavior. That looks like an excellent book, Your Royal Highness. Perhaps we could read some of it together during your free time today? Yes. And maybe we could act out some of the battles in the garden? The simple joy and trust in the child's voice reminded Michael exactly why his job was so important. Protecting the royal family wasn't just about preventing physical threats, it was about preserving their ability to live with dignity and appropriate freedom, especially for the children who had no choice in their public roles. As they made their way through the palace corridors toward the morning room where Prince Louis would have breakfast with his siblings, Michael noticed Tom Parker Bowles approaching from the opposite direction. The man's expression was neutral, but there was something calculated about his timing and route that put Michael on alert. Good morning, Prince Louis, Tom said with exaggerated cheerfulness. I hope you slept well after yesterday's excitement. Prince Louis moved closer to Michael instinctively, clearly remembering the previous day's unpleasant encounter. Good morning, Mr. Tom, he said politely but without his usual warmth. Tom's eyes flicked to Michael with barely concealed hostility. Sergeant Thompson, I trust you've had time to reflect on our conversation yesterday? Michael kept his voice level and professional. Good morning, Mr. Parker Bowles. I hope you're having a pleasant visit to the castle. The diplomatic non-answer was clearly not what Tom had been hoping for. His jaw tightened slightly, and Michael could see him calculating his next move. I was actually hoping we might have a more detailed discussion about security protocols and family communication procedures, Tom said, his tone suggesting this was not a request. Prince Louis tugged gently on Michael's sleeve. Sergeant Thompson, I think I hear George and Charlotte in the breakfast room. Michael recognized the child's attempt to escape the uncomfortable situation and responded immediately. Of course, Your Royal Highness. We shouldn't keep your siblings waiting. As they began to move away, Tom called out in a voice loud enough to be heard by several passing staff members. Sergeant Thompson, I do hope you'll make time for that discussion soon. There are some important matters that need to be clarified. The implicit threat was clear, but Michael simply nodded acknowledgement without committing to anything specific. His primary duty was to Prince Louis, and right now the duty required getting the boy away from Tom's manipulative behavior. In the breakfast room, Prince George and Princess Charlotte greeted their younger brother with typical sibling energy. Michael took his customary position near the door, from where he could observe the family interaction while maintaining security awareness of the surrounding area. Princess Charlotte, at 9 years old already showing signs of the diplomatic skills that would serve her well in her future royal role, immediately noticed her brother's subdued mood. Louis, are you all right? You seem quiet this morning. Prince George, 11 and increasingly aware of adult complexities, looked between his brother and Michael with curiosity. Did something happen? Michael watched as Prince Louis struggled with how to explain the previous day's events to his siblings. The boy's natural honesty was competing with his innate understanding that some adult situations were complicated and not entirely appropriate for children to discuss. Mr. Tom was a bit grumpy yesterday, Louis finally said. But Sergeant Thompson made sure I was safe. The simple statement carried more weight than the child probably realized. Princess Charlotte and Prince George both looked at Michael with expressions of gratitude and trust that reminded him why his work mattered so much. The breakfast proceeded normally, with the children discussing their plans for the day and their upcoming school activities. Michael found himself relaxing slightly as the familiar routine of family life surrounded him. However, his peace was short-lived. As the children finished eating and prepared to move to their next activities, a palisade appeared at the breakfast room door. Sergeant Thompson, the aide said quietly, Commander Harrison requests your immediate presence in his office. Michael felt the familiar tightening in his stomach that indicated more complications were ahead. He looked at the 3 royal children, who were watching him with concern. I'll be back shortly, he assured them. Sergeant Williams will be with you until I return. As he followed the aide through the palace corridors, Michael wondered what new development Tom Parker Bowles had manufactured to challenge his authority and potentially threaten his career. Commander Harrison's office felt different this time as Michael entered. The atmosphere was heavier, more serious than during their previous conversation. Seated across from the commander's desk was Assistant Private Secretary Margaret Thornton, whose presence immediately signaled that this meeting involved higher-level palace politics. Sergeant Thompson, Commander Harrison began formally, please have a seat. I'm afraid we have some developments to discuss regarding your interaction with Mr. Parker Bowles. Margaret Thornton opened a manila folder and adjusted her glasses before speaking. Sergeant, Mr. Parker Bowles has escalated his complaint and has requested a formal review of your conduct. He's also made some additional allegations about your general attitude toward family members. Michael felt his jaw tighten but maintained his professional composure. What specific allegations, ma'am? He claims that you've been consistently dismissive of family members who aren't in the direct line of succession, and that you've created an uncomfortable atmosphere for extended family during their visits to royal residences. The accusations stung because they were completely fabricated, but Michael recognized the calculated nature of Tom's strategy. By broadening the complaint beyond the single incident with Prince Louis, Tom was trying to paint a pattern of behavior that would be harder to defend against. Ma'am, I can provide detailed logs of all my interactions with extended family members over the past 2 years. I believe the record will show consistent professionalism and appropriate respect. Commander Harrison leaned forward slightly. We've already begun that review, Sergeant. However, Mr. Parker Bowles has also suggested that your protective instincts regarding the children may be excessive and potentially harmful to normal family relationships. This accusation struck at the heart of Michael's professional identity and personal commitment to the royal children's well-being. The idea that protecting them could be considered excessive was both insulting and deeply concerning. "Sir, with respect, my protective measures are based on established protocols and the specific instructions I received from the Prince and Princess of Wales. I've never exceeded my authority or interfered with appropriate family interactions." Margaret Thornton consulted her notes again. Mr. Parker Bowles has provided a list of witnesses who he claims will support his version of events and his broader concerns about your conduct. Michael's mind raced as he tried to think of who might support Tom's claims. Most palace staff had witnessed his professional and respectful behavior over many years. However, he realized that Tom might have found ways to manipulate situations or statements to support his narrative. "I would welcome the opportunity to address any specific concerns with concrete examples," Michael said carefully. Commander Harrison exchanged a look with Margaret Thornton before continuing. "There's another complication, Sergeant. Mr. Parker Bowles has indicated that his mother, Queen Camilla, shares his concerns about your conduct." The mention of Queen Camilla raised the stakes significantly. While Michael's direct responsibilities were to Prince William's family, any complaint that reached the Queen's level required serious attention and careful handling. "Have these concerns been directly communicated by Her Majesty, or are they being reported through Mr. Parker Bowles?" Michael asked. "That's still being clarified," Margaret Thornton replied diplomatically, which Michael interpreted as meaning they weren't entirely sure of Queen Camilla's actual position on the matter. The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Commander Harrison's assistant entered with an apologetic expression. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have an urgent communication from Kensington Palace. Prince William has requested an immediate conference call regarding Sergeant Thompson's situation." Michael felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Prince William's direct involvement suggested that the matter was being taken seriously at the highest levels, but it also meant that his career and reputation were now subject to royal family politics beyond his control. "Put the call through immediately," Commander Harrison instructed. The speakerphone crackled to life, and Prince William's familiar voice filled the room with its characteristic authority and measured tone. "Commander Harrison, MS. Thornton, I understand there have been some concerning developments regarding Sergeant Thompson's exemplary service to our family." "Yes, Your Royal Highness," Commander Harrison replied. "We were just reviewing the situation with the sergeant." "I want to be absolutely clear about our position," Prince William continued. "Catherine and I have complete confidence in Sergeant Thompson's judgment and professionalism. His protection of our children has been exemplary, and his conduct during the incident with Tom Parker Bowles was entirely appropriate and necessary." Michael felt a wave of relief, but he knew the situation was still complicated by the broader family dynamics at play. However, Prince William continued, "We also recognize that family harmony is important, and we want to address any legitimate concerns while ensuring our children's security remains paramount." Margaret Thornton leaned toward the speakerphone. "Your Royal Highness, Mr. Parker Bowles has suggested that a different guard might be better suited to balance family relationships with security requirements." The silence that followed was significant. Michael could practically feel Prince William's displeasure through the phone connection. "Miss Thornton, I want to be very clear on this point. Sergeant Thompson has earned our complete trust through years of dedicated service. Any decision to reassign him would be entirely contrary to our wishes and would not be accepted by the Princess and myself." The firmness in Prince William's voice left no room for misinterpretation. Michael felt his shoulders relax slightly as the weight of royal support settled around him. "Of course, Your Royal Highness," Margaret Thornton replied quickly. "We simply wanted to explore all options for resolving this situation amicably." "The resolution is simple," Prince William said. "Sergeant Thompson continues in his current role with our full support. If Mr. Parker Bowles has concerns about security protocols, he should direct them to the appropriate channels rather than attempting to circumvent established procedures." After the call ended, the office fell silent for several moments. Michael recognized that while Prince William's support was crucial, it didn't eliminate the political challenges that Tom's campaign might create within the broader royal household. "Well, Sergeant," Commander Harrison finally said, "it appears your position is secure from an operational standpoint. However, we need to discuss how to handle ongoing interactions with Mr. Parker Bowles." Margaret Thornton closed her folder and looked directly at Michael. "The challenge is that while you have the support of Prince William and Princess Catherine, Mr. Parker Bowles may continue to create situations designed to undermine your authority or provoke incidents." Michael nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "What are your recommendations?" "Maintain your professional standards exactly as you have been," Commander Harrison replied. "However, be especially careful to document any interactions with Mr. Parker Bowles. We want a clear record of your conduct in case there are future allegations." Additionally, Margaret Thornton added, if possible, ensure that other staff members are present during any interactions with Mr. Parker Bowles. Independent witnesses will be valuable if there are further complaints. As Michael left the meeting, he felt both vindicated and concerned. Prince William's support was unequivocal, but Tom's willingness to escalate complaints and potentially involve Queen Camilla suggested that the conflict was far from over. Returning to his duties, Michael found Prince Louis in the library with his tutor, working on a history lesson about medieval castles. The boy's face lit up when he saw Michael return. "Sergeant Thompson, we're learning about castle defenses. Did you know that guards used to pour hot oil on attackers?" Michael smiled, appreciating the innocent enthusiasm that reminded him why his work was so important. "That's quite fascinating, Your Royal Highness." Medieval guards had to be very creative to protect their castles and the people inside them. The tutor, Mrs. Elizabeth Harrington, looked up from the lesson plan with a warm smile. "Prince Louis has been particularly interested in learning about the loyalty and bravery of castle guards throughout history." Michael caught the subtle emphasis in her words and realized that news of his confrontation with Tom had reached even the educational staff. The support was encouraging, but it also reminded him how closely his actions were being observed and discussed throughout the palace. As the day progressed, Michael noticed several other staff members finding opportunities to express their support discreetly. A nod from a fellow guard, a warm smile from a housekeeper, a brief word of encouragement from a secretary, all small gestures that collectively demonstrated the palace community's recognition of his professionalism and dedication. However, he also became aware of a different atmosphere when Tom Parker Bowles was present in the palace. Conversations seemed more strained, staff members appeared more cautious, and there was an underlying tension that hadn't existed before the confrontation. During the afternoon, as Prince Louis played in the nursery with his siblings, Michael received an unexpected visitor. Lady Susan Hussey approached him with her characteristic grace and diplomatic bearing. "Sergeant Thompson," she said quietly, "might I have a word with you privately?" They stepped into a small anteroom off the main corridor, where Lady Susan's expression became more serious and direct. "I wanted you to know that your handling of the situation with Tom Parker Bowles has been noted and appreciated by many of us who have served this family for decades," she began. "Your priority of the children's well-being over adult politics is exactly what this institution needs." Michael felt honored by her words, knowing that Lady Susan's opinion carried significant weight within palace circles. "However," she continued, "I also want to warn you that Tom can be quite persistent when he feels his authority has been challenged. He may continue to create situations designed to put you in difficult positions." "I understand, Lady Susan. I'm prepared to continue focusing on my duties regardless of any political complications." She nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the right approach. The children need consistency and reliability from their protection officers, especially during times when adult relationships become complicated." As evening approached, Michael reflected on the day's developments. Prince William's strong support had secured his position, but Tom's escalating complaints suggested that more challenges lay ahead. The palace community seemed largely supportive, but he recognized that navigating royal family politics would require even more careful attention to his conduct and judgment. Most importantly, Prince Louis and his siblings continued to trust him completely, playing and laughing with the same carefree joy that made his protective role so meaningful. Whatever political battles might rage among the adults, Michael was determined to ensure that the children remained shielded from inappropriate pressure and manipulation. The confrontation with Tom Parker Bowles had evolved from a simple incident into a broader test of Michael's commitment to his principles and his ability to navigate the complex world of royal service. As he prepared for another day of protecting the future of the monarchy, Michael knew that his resolve to put the children's well-being first would continue to guide his actions, regardless of the personal or professional costs. 3 weeks had passed since the initial confrontation, and Michael had begun to hope that Tom Parker Bowles had moved on to other concerns. However, his optimism proved premature when he arrived at Sandringham Estate for the royal family's extended weekend visit. The familiar Norfolk countryside usually provided a more relaxed atmosphere for royal protection duties, but Michael sensed tension in the air from the moment he arrived. The staff briefing that morning revealed that Tom would be joining the family gathering, ostensibly to spend time with his mother, Queen Camilla, and to participate in some of the estate's traditional activities. Commander Harrison had specifically requested that Michael maintain his usual professional standards while being particularly mindful of any interactions with Tom. Prince Louis was excited about the Sandringham visit, as it offered more freedom to explore and play outdoors than the more formal palace environments. The estate's vast grounds provided perfect opportunities for the kind of adventurous play that an energetic 8-year-old craved. "Sergeant Thompson," Louis called out as they walked through the estate's famous gardens, "can we go to the lake today? I want to see if the swans remember me from last time." Michael smiled at the boy's enthusiasm. "Of course, Your Royal Highness. We'll check with your parents about the best time to visit the lake." They were making their way toward the main house when Tom Parker Bowles appeared on the path ahead of them, seemingly by coincidence, though Michael's instincts suggested otherwise. Tom was accompanied by 2 other adults whom Michael didn't immediately recognize, visitors who appeared to be friends or associates rather than family members. "Prince Louis," Tom called out with exaggerated friendliness. "How wonderful to see you here at Sandringham. I was just telling my friends about what a remarkable young man you're becoming." Prince Louis responded politely but without enthusiasm, staying close to Michael as they approached the group. Michael noted the boy's body language and felt his protective instincts heighten. "Sergeant Thompson," Tom continued, "I'd like you to meet some friends of mine. This is Robert Morrison, a journalist who's very interested in royal family dynamics, and Sarah Chen, who works in public relations for several high-profile families." Michael immediately understood the implication. Tom had brought potential witnesses or supporters who could provide outside validation for his complaints about palace security procedures. The introduction was clearly designed to put Michael in an uncomfortable position. "Good morning," Michael replied neutrally, offering brief nods to the visitors without engaging in extended conversation. Robert Morrison stepped forward with the aggressive friendliness that Michael recognized from years of dealing with media representatives. "Sergeant Thompson, I understand you have one of the most challenging jobs in the world, protecting these wonderful children while balancing complex family relationships." The comment was clearly designed to elicit a response that could be later quoted or misinterpreted. Michael's training in media relations kicked in immediately. "My focus is always on ensuring the safety and appropriate security for the members of the royal family under my protection," he replied professionally. Sarah Chen smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. That must sometimes create difficult situations when family members have different ideas about what's appropriate for the children. Prince Louis tugged gently on Michael's sleeve, clearly uncomfortable with the adult conversation and the obvious tension. Michael recognized the child's distress and knew his primary responsibility was to remove him from the situation. "If you'll excuse us," Michael said firmly, "Prince Louis has some activities scheduled, and we need to return to the main house." Tom's expression hardened slightly. "Actually, Sergeant Thompson, I was hoping Prince Louis might join us for a walk around the estate. My friends would love to hear about his interests and activities." The suggestion sent alarm bells ringing in Michael's mind. The presence of a journalist and PR professional, combined with Tom's continued attempts to separate Prince Louis from his established security arrangements, created a situation that was clearly inappropriate and potentially harmful. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Parker Bowles. Prince Louis has scheduled activities with his family, and any changes to his itinerary need to be approved by the Prince and Princess of Wales." Robert Morrison pulled out a small notebook, ostensibly casual but clearly documenting the interaction.
That seems quite rigid, doesn't it? Surely family members should have some flexibility in spending time with the children?
Michael felt the familiar surge of protective anger but maintained his professional composure. The security protocols are designed to ensure the children's safety and comfort, while allowing for appropriate family interaction within established guidelines.
Tom stepped closer, clearly trying to create a more confrontational dynamic for his witnesses to observe. Sergeant Thompson, I think you're misunderstanding the situation.
These are family friends, and Prince Louis would benefit from interacting with a broader range of people. Prince Louis had moved even closer to Michael, practically hiding behind the guard's legs. The child's distress was obvious to anyone paying attention, but Tom seemed determined to ignore it in favor of his agenda.
Your Royal Highness, Michael said gently to Prince Louis, would you like to return to the house now? I believe your grandmother mentioned something special for lunch today.
Yes, please, Louis whispered, his usual confidence replaced by clear anxiety. Tom's voice rose slightly, ensuring that his companions could hear every word clearly.
This is exactly what I've been talking about.
Sergeant Thompson consistently undermines family authority and creates unnecessary barriers to normal interaction. Sarah Chen was now openly taking notes on her phone, while Robert Morrison had positioned himself to observe the entire scene. Michael realized that Tom had orchestrated this encounter specifically to create a documented incident that could support his ongoing complaints.
Mr.
Parker Bowles, Michael said with quiet authority, Prince Louis has expressed his desire to return to the house. As his protection officer, I'm responding to his comfort level and following established protocols. But you're not responding to the reasonable requests of a senior family member, Tom countered, playing to his audience. Michael looked directly at Tom, his voice remaining calm but carrying unmistakable steel. My responsibility is to Prince Louis's well-being first and foremost. That includes protecting him from situations that cause him distress. The statement hung in the air as Tom realized that Michael had essentially accused him of distressing a child in front of witnesses. Robert Morrison's pen stopped moving as he processed the implication, while Sarah Chen looked between Tom and Michael with obvious concern. Prince Louis chose that moment to step slightly out from behind Michael.
Mr. Tom, I want to go back to Mummy now. Can we please go, Sergeant Thompson?
The child's clear and direct statement undermined Tom's entire narrative. It was impossible to argue that Michael was being overprotective when Prince Louis himself was expressing discomfort and requesting to leave.
Of course, Your Royal Highness, Michael replied immediately. Let's head back to the house.
As they walked away, Michael could hear Tom's voice behind them, now sounding defensive and frustrated as he tried to explain the situation to his increasingly uncomfortable companions. When they reached the main house, Princess Catherine was waiting in the morning room, having apparently been alerted to the situation by other staff members who had observed the encounter. Hello, darling, she said to Prince Louis with particular warmth.
How was your walk around the gardens?
It was nice, Mummy, but then Mr. Tom wanted me to talk to some strangers, and I didn't want to.
Sergeant Thompson said we could come back to you.
Catherine's expression remained composed, but Michael caught the slight tightening around her eyes that indicated her displeasure with Tom's behavior.
You did exactly the right thing, Louis. If you're ever uncomfortable in a situation, you should always feel free to ask to return to family.
She looked at Michael with a subtle nod of approval before adding, Sergeant Thompson, thank you for handling the situation appropriately. Later that afternoon, Michael was summoned to meet with Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary, who had arrived at Sandringham specifically to address the escalating situation with Tom Parker Bowles. Sergeant Thompson, Sir Clive began in his measured, diplomatic tone, I understand there was another incident this morning involving Mr. Parker Bowles and some of his associates. Michael provided a detailed account of the morning's events, including his assessment that Tom had deliberately orchestrated the encounter to create documentation for his ongoing complaints. Sir Clive listened carefully before responding. This situation has become more complex than a simple security matter.
Mr.
Parker Bowles has apparently been building a case that our security procedures are excessive and potentially harmful to normal family relationships. "Sir, with respect, my actions today were specifically in response to Prince Louis's obvious discomfort with the situation." The child clearly expressed his desire to leave. "I understand, and that's actually very important." Mr. Parker Bowles's associates witnessed Prince Louis's distress and his direct request to return to his mother. That somewhat undermines their ability to support claims of overly rigid security procedures. Michael felt a glimmer of hope that Tom's strategy might have backfired. Sir Clive continued, "However, we need to address this situation definitively before it escalates further. His Majesty has been briefed on the ongoing issues, and there are concerns that this personal conflict could become a distraction from more important royal duties." "What are your recommendations, sir?" "Continue your excellent work protecting Prince Louis and his siblings. However, be aware that Mr. Parker Bowles may make one final attempt to create a situation that supports his complaints. We need you to remain absolutely professional regardless of any provocation." As evening approached, Michael reflected on the day's events while maintaining his security watch over the royal family's dinner. Tom's escalating tactics suggested desperation, but they also indicated that he was willing to use more aggressive methods to achieve his goals. The arrival of outside witnesses had been a concerning development, but Prince Louis's own clear expression of discomfort had inadvertently provided the strongest possible defense of Michael's actions. Sometimes, Michael realized, the truth was best expressed through the honest reactions of a child who hadn't yet learned to navigate adult politics and manipulation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Michael felt more confident in his position. The royal family's support remained strong, palace staff continued to respect his professionalism, and, most importantly, the children trusted him to protect them from inappropriate pressure and uncomfortable situations. Tom Parker Bowles might be planning additional confrontations, but Michael was prepared to face them with the same dedication to duty and protection of the royal children that had guided his career for 15 years. The battle for his professional integrity and the children's well-being was far from over, but he was determined to emerge victorious through unwavering commitment to his principles. The final confrontation came on a grey December morning at Buckingham Palace, 6 weeks after the initial incident in Windsor's Gardens. Michael had hoped that Tom Parker Bowles would eventually abandon his campaign, but, instead, Tom had chosen to make one last dramatic attempt to undermine Michael's position and authority. The occasion was a pre-Christmas gathering that brought together various members of the extended royal family for traditional activities and gift exchanges. Prince Louis was particularly excited because he had been practicing a piano piece to perform for his relatives, and he had been looking forward to showing everyone his improvements since his last lesson. Michael arrived early to conduct his usual security assessment of the areas where Prince Louis would be spending time. The morning room had been arranged with comfortable seating and a small piano where Louis would perform his piece later in the day. Everything seemed normal and appropriately prepared. However, Michael's sense of unease grew when he noticed Tom Parker Bowles arriving with an unusually large entourage. Along with his previous companions, Robert Morrison and Sarah Chen, Tom had brought what appeared to be a legal representative and someone who looked like a palace administration official that Michael didn't recognize. The morning proceeded normally at first, with Prince Louis enjoying time with his cousins and other young family members. His excitement about his planned piano performance was infectious, and he spent considerable time discussing his chosen piece with anyone who would listen. "Sergeant Thompson," Louis said during a quiet moment, "do you think everyone will like my piano piece? I've been practicing really hard, and I want it to be perfect." Michael smiled at the boy's earnest concern. "Your Royal Highness, I'm sure everyone will be very proud of your hard work and improvement. The most important thing is that you enjoy playing." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Tom Parker Bowles and his assembled group. Tom's expression was more serious and determined than Michael had seen before, suggesting that whatever he had planned represented his final gambit in their ongoing conflict. "Prince Louis," Tom said in a tone that was friendly but carried an undertone of authority, "I have some very special guests who would love to hear about your interests and activities. Would you join us in the blue drawing room for a private conversation?" Michael immediately recognized the problematic nature of the request. The blue drawing room was in a different part of the palace, away from the planned family activities and Prince Louis's parents. The presence of unknown adults, including what appeared to be a legal representative, created a situation that was completely inappropriate for a child. Mr. Parker Bowles, Michael said diplomatically but firmly, Prince Louis has scheduled activities here with his family. Any changes to his itinerary need to be coordinated with the Prince and Princess of Wales. Tom's legal representative stepped forward, introducing himself as Charles Worthington.
Sergeant Thompson, we're here today to document what we believe has become a pattern of excessive interference with normal family relationships.
Mr. Parker Bowles has the right to spend time with his stepnephew without inappropriate security restrictions. The formal language and legal implications immediately escalated the situation beyond the personal conflict that had been brewing for weeks. Michael realized that Tom was attempting to create a documented incident that could be used in some form of official complaint or legal proceeding. Prince Louis had moved closer to Michael, clearly sensing the adult tension and becoming uncomfortable with the formal, confrontational atmosphere that had suddenly surrounded him. "I understand your concerns," Michael replied carefully, "but my responsibilities are defined by the specific instructions I received from Prince Louis's parents and established security protocols. Those protocols exist to ensure his safety and appropriate care." Sarah Chen was openly recording the interaction on her phone, while Robert Morrison took detailed notes. The palace administration official was observing everything with the detached interest of someone gathering evidence for a formal review. Tom's voice rose slightly, ensuring that his words would be clearly captured. "Sergeant Thompson, you are consistently refusing the reasonable requests of a senior family member. Prince Louis is my stepnephew, and I have every right to spend time with him away from the constant supervision that you seem to believe is necessary." Michael felt Prince Louis move even closer, and, when he looked down, he could see real anxiety in the child's eyes. The boy was clearly distressed by the adults arguing around him and the formal, intimidating presence of strangers with cameras and notebooks. "Mr. Parker Bowles," Michael said, his voice carrying quiet but unmistakable authority, "Prince Louis is showing clear signs of distress. As his protection officer, my primary concern is his emotional and physical well-being."
"That's exactly the problem," Tom exclaimed, clearly playing to his audience.
"You're using the child's natural shyness to justify your excessive control over family interactions." The accusation was so unfair and manipulative that Michael felt his professional composure strain for the first time in weeks. Tom was essentially arguing that Prince Louis's obvious discomfort with being surrounded by strangers with recording equipment was merely natural shyness that shouldn't influence security decisions.
At that moment, Prince Louis made a decision that surprised everyone present.
Instead of hiding behind Michael or asking to leave, the 8-year-old stepped forward and looked directly at Tom with remarkable composure for his age.
"Mr. Tom," Prince Louis said in his clear, young voice, "I don't want to talk to these people I don't know.
I want to stay here with my family and play my piano piece later.
Please stop arguing with Sergeant Thompson.
He's trying to take care of me." The directness and clarity of the child's statement created a moment of stunned silence. Robert Morrison stopped writing, Sarah Chen lowered her phone, and even the legal representative looked uncomfortable with the situation they had helped create. Tom's face reddened as he realized that his stepnephew's own words had completely undermined his narrative about excessive security restrictions. It was impossible to argue that Michael was being overprotective when Prince Louis himself was clearly and articulately expressing his preferences and discomfort. Before Tom could respond, Princess Catherine appeared in the doorway, having apparently been summoned by staff members who had witnessed the escalating confrontation. "Louis, darling," she said with perfect calm, "I heard you were having some interesting conversations.
Are you ready to practice your piano piece one more time before your performance?"
Prince Louis immediately brightened and ran to his mother.
"Yes, Mummy. I want to make sure I get all the notes right."
Catherine looked at the assembled group with polite but unmistakable displeasure. "Gentlemen, ladies, I hope you're enjoying your visit to the palace. Louis has some family activities to attend to, so if you'll excuse us." The dismissal was diplomatically phrased but absolutely clear. Tom's legal representative and the other observers began to file out, clearly understanding that their presence was no longer welcome. Tom remained behind, his face a mixture of frustration and defeated anger.
"Catherine, I think we need to have a serious discussion about the security arrangements for the children. This level of restriction is harmful to normal family relationships.
Princess Catherine's expression remained composed, but her voice carried steel.
Tom, I think we need to have a serious discussion about what constitutes appropriate behavior around children. Louis has clearly expressed his preferences, and those preferences will be respected.
But surely you can see that Sergeant Thompson's interpretation of his duties is exactly what William and I expect and require, Catherine interrupted firmly. Sergeant Thompson has our complete confidence and support.
This conversation is over.
Tom left without another word, his assembled supporters trailing behind him like deflated balloons. The formal documentation of what was supposed to be Michael's professional misconduct had instead become clear evidence of Tom's inappropriate pressure on a child. Later that afternoon, Prince Louis performed his piano piece beautifully for his assembled family members. His earlier distress had been completely replaced by joy and pride in his musical accomplishment. As he took his bow to enthusiastic applause, he caught Michael's eye and offered a small, grateful smile.
Following the performance, Michael was summoned to meet with Sir Clive Alderton and Commander Harrison.
Both men looked pleased rather than concerned, which was a relief after the morning's drama. Sergeant Thompson, Sir Clive began, I understand this morning's events provided a rather definitive resolution to Mr. Parker Bowles's complaints about your conduct.
Yes, sir. Prince Louis made his preferences very clear to everyone present.
Commander Harrison smiled slightly.
Indeed he did. Mr. Parker Bowles's legal representative has already indicated that they will not be pursuing any formal complaints.
Apparently, having an 8-year-old clearly articulate his discomfort with their tactics was not the kind of evidence they were hoping to gather. Sir Clive added, His Majesty has been briefed on the situation and has expressed his satisfaction with how you've handled these challenges. Your unwavering focus on the children's well-being, despite considerable personal and professional pressure, exemplifies the best traditions of royal service. Michael felt a profound sense of relief and validation.
Thank you, sir.
The children's safety and comfort will always be my primary concern.
We know, Sergeant. That's exactly why you have the complete support of the royal family.
As Christmas approached, the palace atmosphere returned to its normal rhythm of tradition and celebration. Tom Parker Bowles made no further attempts to challenge Michael's authority, and his visits to royal residences became noticeably less frequent and more appropriately conducted. Prince Louis continued to thrive under Michael's protection, growing more confident and outgoing while maintaining the trust and security that appropriate adult supervision provided. His successful navigation of the confrontation with Tom had actually seemed to mature him slightly, giving him a better understanding of his own agency and voice in uncomfortable situations. On Christmas Eve, as Michael conducted his final security check of the day, Prince Louis approached him with a small wrapped gift. Sergeant Thompson, the boy said with characteristic seriousness, I made this for you because you always keep me safe and help me feel brave. Inside the wrapping was a hand-drawn picture showing a castle guard standing protectively beside a small prince. At the bottom, in Prince Louis's careful handwriting, were the words, Thank you for being the best guard ever. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion as he looked at the heartfelt gift.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. This is the greatest honor I could receive.
You're welcome, Louis replied with a bright smile. Mummy says that brave people protect others even when it's hard.
You're very brave, Sergeant Thompson.
As the boy ran off to rejoin his siblings, Michael reflected on the events of the past few months. His refusal to back down from his professional responsibilities had been tested by personal attacks, bureaucratic pressure, and calculated manipulation. However, his unwavering commitment to protecting Prince Louis and his siblings had ultimately been vindicated by the very children he served. The confrontation with Tom Parker Bowles had ended not with dramatic gestures or formal proceedings, but with the simple, honest voice of a child who understood that he was safe and protected. Sometimes, Michael realized, the most powerful defense of one's principles came not from elaborate arguments or political maneuvering, but from the clear recognition of those who benefited from one's dedication and courage. His career as a royal protection officer would continue to face challenges and complications, but Michael knew that as long as he maintained his focus on the well-being of the children under his care, he would have the strength and support necessary to face any future tests of his resolve. The brave royal guard had refused to back down, and, in doing so, had ensured that the future of the monarchy would grow up with the security and confidence they needed to fulfill their destined roles.